So why isn't this getting national attention as well?
You don't read the newspaper, you're uninformed. If you do read it, you're misinformed.
Over 100 people were shot in Chicago this past weekend.
No one is talking about this.
We start out in Hollywood, California, as the 2024 ESPYs are kicking off, but there's unfortunately a complete mess surrounding Harry receiving the incredible Pat Tillman Award. For those of you who don't know who Pat Tillman is, let me introduce you real quick. Pat was a safety in the NFL for the Arizona Cardinals from 98 to 2001, where after the 9/11 attacks, he left his career in the NFL and joined the Army and eventually became an Army Ranger who was even there during the invasion of Iraq, where unfortunately come 2004, he was killed by friendly fire, which I will not get into the specifics that the Army claimed he was killed by enemy combatants in order to protect the Army's own image while they knew it was friendly fire the whole time, but that's for another day. Anyway, the Pat Tillman Award is supposed to go to someone who obviously embodies Pat Tillman's legacy of sacrifice and service, in which I'll give you ESPN's reasoning for this, for choosing Harry, as they say that Harry serving in the British Army for 10 years, including 2 tours in Afghanistan as a helicopter pilot and launching what's called the Invictus Games, which is a Paralympic-style game for wounded and injured veterans, is pretty much the reason why he is receiving the award, per ESPN. A lot of Harry critics don't know that about Harry, that he also did 10 years in the British Army and 2 tours in Afghanistan. I would agree that Harry is deserving of the Pat Tillman Award, but only prior, very important, prior to the absolute dishonest media absurdity that he and his wife have been doing for the last several years, as this really, really deep level of victimhood he and his wife have been portraying about themselves for the last several years now is the absolute opposite of who Pat Tillman is. And I think that's why people are so enraged that he's now receiving this award. I do think there are way better options in the pool of sacrifice and service that are more deserving of the award, as this does just seem like yet another media handout just because that someone is within the media's own inner circle. Now, over to, actually, going to stay in the NFL for this next story real quick. We're going to head over to Alabama, as the former number 1 pick in the NFL draft, who should have been charged with fraud for stealing $40 million from the Oakland Raiders after being drafted in 2007 and never actually performing. Everyone knows who I'm talking about this if you're a football fan. He is back in the news again for committing more fraud. Jamarcus Russell, recently fired from his position as a volunteer football coach at his own high school in Alabama, Williamson High, as the school is accusing him of fraud. Apparently, Jamarcus Russell was approaching local businesses on the school's behalf to donate money to the football team, but then actually was keeping the money to himself. In one instance, Jamarcus approached a local business owner, Chris Knowles, and somehow convinced Chris to write him a check for $74,000 that would allegedly go to replacing the school's weight room equipment. Records show that Russell deposited the check at a local credit union and then immediately drew out $55,000 in cash of a withdrawal, as the school has said they have never received a penny of that money. Now listen closely here, guys. Rule number 1 in life is treat others the way you want to be treated. And rule number 2 is do not give Jamarcus Russell any money under any circumstances, ever. Oh my goodness. Just don't do it. Someone please put a scarlet letter on this man for the rest of his life, because he is just stealing from everybody he can get his hands on that is football related. The guys will not do anything he's going to say. He will not. The Oakland Raiders had a suspicion He was not watching any film back in his rookie year, which is part of the reason why he was so bad in the NFL, that Raiders executives actually gave him fake film tapes that had nothing on them. They were completely blank, and told him to watch them over the weekend. And when he came back on Monday, he said, "Yeah, I saw the blitz packages." Oh, what a fraudster. Maybe fraudster of the year here, though. Nah, I can't go that far. Now, this isn't a news show focused just on sports, but there are a lot of under-the-surface stories on sports this week, so we're going to hop over to the NBA now, and then after, jump over to Sudan, actually. So, to the NBA now, as Karl Malone, remember the NBA legend? An absolutely wild story here, as his estranged son, Demetrius Bell, who played offensive tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles, turned 40 back in May. Karl Malone, being 60 years old himself, would make him 20 years old at the time of his son's birth, while Gloria Bell, mother of Demetrius, being 53 years old now. Now, if you're not mathing with me here, what this means is that Gloria Bell was just 13 years old when she gave birth to then 20-year-old Karl Malone's son. So Karl had a son with a 13-year-old girl at the time. That is absolutely insane. And what's more insane is that this has never reached the surface of the media. An NBA legend, Hall of Famer, having a child underneath the surface with a 13-year-old girl. Like, ESPN, where are you with this? Anyway, jumping out of the U.S. news now, we head over to Sudan, a country in northeastern Africa that's been in full civil war close to 16 months now. The Sudanese armed forces and the Rapid Support Forces began fighting in April of 2023 with each other for control of the country since its military coup took place back in 2021. Now, I'm not going to act like I know the second-by-second details of a civil war that's taking place in a third world country across the world. However, fact here, famine is affecting a wildly number of people north of the hundreds of thousands. Tens of thousands of people have been killed already, where the fighting is taking place from South Darfur and up through to the Red Sea. Now, there are two main organizations battling for control of the country, but 5 known groups are fighting in total. Another holy war over land and power, meaning this won't be stopping anytime soon. But the point of this story is that, yes, there are humanitarian crises happening in parts of the world that aren't in the Middle East or start with the letter U and end with crane. Also, a violent conflict involving the changing of a government happening in a third world country across the world? Of course, NGO and U.S. delegates are on scene trying to map out a strategy to intervene as they've secured an on and off ceasefire that, of course, I'm sure is in the best interest of the third world country and not the best interest of the U.S. or the greater global power. Of course. Oh, the opportunistic U.S. government looking at a struggling third world country like Jack Nicholson from anger management. Now on to some good news now. And back into the United States, specifically Florida now, as Theodore Roosevelt's famous watch that had been stolen over 40 years ago has finally been recovered. The engraved pocket watch belonging to the 26th president was originally in the possession of the Sagamore Hill National Historic Site since President Roosevelt died back in 1919. The historic site then loaned the watch to the Theodore Roosevelt inaugural National Historic Site in 1971 for a 6-year special exhibition. But unfortunately, during that 6-year special exhibition, the watch was stolen and wouldn't be identified again. It did not resurface until it was up for auction close to 40 years later in Florida, where an auctioneer had recognized it before it went up for auction as the stolen watch and contacted the Sagamore Hill National Historic Site, who then contacted the FBI. And of course, the FBI, who was basically gifted a completed investigation, tries to take full credit here, with the FBI stating, and I'm not kidding on this, the repatriation of the watch would not have been possible without the close collaboration between the FBI and the NPS. You cannot make this up. The FBI taking credit for an investigation that was completed and gifted with a bow to them. It's taking full credit for it. It's like spending the entire day cleaning your whole house, and then your wife or husband comes home afterwards and says some shit like, "Yeah, if it wasn't for me, this place would still look like a pigsty." Oh, anyway. Thanks for watching. News podcast will be out every Wednesday at 6 a.m. and I will see you then. So let's do it.
News and factual material are deeply researched through confirming the validity of multiple sources by the broader media landscape across the global sector in the digital world. All statements are a combination of primary and secondary research components geared towards providing the only news show in video and podcast form that provides a clear understanding of important world issues that are being left out by the completely biased and politically driven global media machine. Thank you for listening.